struggled a little bit with that first exercise I gave you, which is a bit of a sneaky one, I asked you to write down why you're a cat. Now, I hope that there are lots of you out there who have a really good long list of reasons why you're a catch. If, however, you struggled with this part of the exercise, that could be a little bit of a sign that your self-esteem is something you want to work on. So, as I mentioned, self-esteem is really how we feel about ourselves, how happy we feel within ourselves, our self-worth, how much we love ourselves, the kind of relationships we believe we deserve. And of course, our self-esteem can be affected by all sorts of different things. We're all different. We all have different experiences in lives, different backgrounds, different childhoods, different personalities. So if your self-esteem isn't quite where you want it to be at the moment, like, don't worry about it. This is something you can absolutely work on. And I think when you do build your self-esteem, it's that most amazing tool that helps you to choose the right partners for you. So if you are looking to start something real, it's going to be amazing to work on this. So the very first exercise that we're going to look at around how to build your self-esteem is we're going to look at how you can build up your self-esteem almost like links in a chain. So I want you to think your self-esteem is something that can be built every time you take an action that really supports your self-esteem. So let me explain what I mean by that. So say you had an intention. An intention is a bit like a goal. If you had an intention that you're going to eat healthily, every time you make a really nice home-cooked meal, maybe a bit of risotto, that's going to help to be a tick in the box of your self-esteem. If, however, you default and get a really nice greasy takeout, that probably would not be in favor of your self-esteem. Likewise, if you have an intention perhaps to get some fresh air and get some exercise, every time you go outside and you get a walk, even if the weather is absolutely horrible, you're doing something there to build your self-esteem. And it's the same with dating. So ask yourself this evening, what is your intention with dating? Is your intention to start a meaningful long-term relationship? Is your intention to have something a little bit more relaxed or more casual? Every time you take an action that is in line with this, you're going to build your self-esteem. So if you really want to have that committed, loving relationship, every time you choose to spend time with someone who shows up for you as a potentially amazing partner, who's consistent, who's communicative, that's really going to help you to keep fulfilling that self-worth. Likewise, every time you take that video date or you go out there on that date and you do put yourself out there, even though it can be scary, that's again going to be a tick in that box for your self-esteem. So self-esteem can really be built through consistently taking actions that are in line with your higher goals and intentions. So what's the second part of really growing your self-esteem? Well, I think that's also about having really good standards. So dare I say it, I actually think there is such a thing in the dating world as being too picky. So being too picky means that maybe you have such high standards that, only a super person can meet them. However, what we're really looking at with your self-esteem is the other end of the dating spectrum. It's when you might think, as long as they like me, or should I stay in this relationship because I'm concerned that this is the best I'm going to get. It's when you almost want to settle for someone that you don't feel a connection with, who perhaps doesn't treat you in the way that you really deserve, because you're coming from that place of scarcity where you worry that this is it, or you also worry that if this relationship ends, that you're going to have to go back to square one. So if you're in this mindset at the moment, let's think about how you can develop some better standards around who you spend your time with. So to begin with, if you are obviously in a relationship that isn't fulfilling you, that kind of isn't right for you, but you're hanging on in there because just the thought of starting over again feels so difficult, well, what I just want to tell you this evening is, if you do decide to end that relationship, remember, you are not going back to square one. Every time we have a relationship, we get experience, we get clarity about what we want, we get a perspective, we get our knowledge about how to go about finding the right partner. So just because a relationship doesn't work out, it does not mean you're back at square one. So start to really think about what standards could be important to you in looking for a partner. When I'm talking about standards, by the way, I'm not saying that a bad standard would be, I guess, that the person has to be over 6 foot tall or has to have curly hair. I'm not talking about those kinds of standards. I'm talking about having high standards for how people treat you. Because remember, if someone is as willing and as committed as you are to forming this relationship, they're going to be communicative, they're going to be clear, they will be consistent. So make sure you hold really high standards for people's behavior, who you invite into your life to have that relationship with. So, linked to this, the third thing that I want to talk about, which can help you to really start to build that self esteem, is actually the ability to say no, in, of course, a very nice way. Now, we know that what can happen is if someone doesn't feel they're able to say no and perhaps doesn't say anything at all, that's that horrible dating scenario called ghosting, which, of course, I think we can all be committed to doing no ghosting. So we know when we ghost someone and we actually don't give them an explanation for why the relationship ends, whilst I guess short run it might feel more comfortable and it might feel like you're saving them some emotional pain, actually long run, ghosting leaves people often feeling very confused, that they don't have a clear end to the relationship. So actually being able to clearly say no in a kind way is a really, really important skill to master, not only for your dating life, but also for your social life. So you may also be one of these people that you feel this pressure to always say yes to people's invitations. Now, we know what happens is if you say yes to every date or yes to every social invite, you will eventually feel probably like your emotional batteries have been really run down. You will just run out of energy. So sometimes when we say yes to too much and we end up overcommitting ourselves, then we actually get further away from what we want. We just feel too tired to make good decisions. So again, learning to say no is one of those ways that we help to protect a little bit of our energy levels and a little bit of our self-esteem. So if you're struggling with saying no to people at the moment and you're somebody who just knows you overgive, a really good mindset shift you can make around this to help you give a little bit less, to save a bit more energy for yourself, is to remember that every time you say yes to something, you actually say no to something else. So say you don't really want to go to this social event, but you feel like you have to go because your friends asked you. If you say yes to that social event, you actually might say no to having an evening of rest, to having a chance to have a good night's sleep, to a fitness class the next morning, to catching up with your family on your phone, to maybe sending some messages on Match. So there's always a cost. Whenever you say yes to something, you always say no to something else. So remember when you're saying yes, to keep saying yes to things that also give you enough time to have that space and that restore and that energy to actually go out and do the activities that are really important for you. Because as we know, dating does take time and it does take energy. So perhaps you need to take some of that time and energy back from other areas of your life. So I want you to get more used to, in a nice way, turning people down. And I also want you to not be or not feel the need to be really apologetic about that. You are actually allowed to have your own choice in terms of how you spend your time. And of course, it's good to be a good friend, but you also have to be a good friend to yourself and to really care for yourself as well. So because of that, if you have been invited on a second date and you just don't want to go, it's usually much kinder just to say something like, I don't know about you. I would say something like, thanks for the connection last night or earlier this week. I just didn't feel that level of romantic connection, but I wanted to be open about that and wish you the best. By being clear and kind, that's usually the best route forwards. Likewise, if someone invites you to a party in some future time when we're allowed to go out to parties, you don't need to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't come. You can actually just say, thank you so much for the invite, but I can't make this one. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify yourself. So I really want you to get comfortable with saying no in order to say yes to some others. So this point really links into my last teaching point around self-esteem. And the funny thing about self-esteem is the word is about self. It's about how we speak to and how we think about ourselves. And you know what? It doesn't almost matter, even if we've got loads of great friends and loads of great family members who are all being really kind and really good to us and telling us why we're a catch and doing all that good stuff, even if they're telling us why we're great, if we then tell ourselves, this is going to make me look stupid, or I'm not attractive enough, or no one's going to like me, or I'm just, it's just too hard to get out there, or I'm just going to be rejected. When we have that inner critic takes control and allows you to tell yourself all these negative things, that can quickly tip the scales, so that even if you've got really supportive friends and family, if that inner critic, if your self-talk isn't kind, if you're putting yourself down, if you're giving yourself a thumbs down and telling yourself why you can't do things and why things aren't going to work out, long run, this is going to have a massive impact on your self-esteem. So what I want to do is, during the very last section of this live, I'm going to be teaching you a really neat exercise to help you get in control of that inner critic, which, by the way, we all have. Every single one of us, even who you think are the most confident people in the world, they will always have a little voice in their head that's telling them why they can't do something or why they're not good enough. But it's about understanding that, sure, maybe that voice is always going to be there, but how do we get in control of it? How do we let our inner cheerleader tell us, speak a bit louder and tell us why we can do things? So, in our final section, I'm going to be really looking at how you can get your inner critic to pipe down, and how you can get your inner cheerleader to start telling you why you can do things. Because I promise you, if we can get this self-talk to be really positive, that's going to help your self-esteem, and it's also going to help to build and give you the confidence to go out there, because we know what it is like with dating. Dating is about being proactive. It is about our ability to make ourselves a bit vulnerable and put ourselves out there. So we really want to get you in control of that self-talk. So before we get on to our next survey, I actually have another little exercise for you to do. And this little exercise we will come back to in the final section. So this exercise, all I want you to do is, if you do have an inner critic that needs to be told to shut up, I want you to write down some of the things that inner critic is saying. Is that inner critic saying that that person didn't get back to your message because your message wasn't smart enough? Is your inner critic saying your profile pictures aren't good enough? Is your inner critic saying, don't go on that video date, you won't have anything to say? I want you to write down what you think and what your inner critic is telling you. And don't worry, we're not going to leave it there. I am going to resolve this, but we're going to sort it out in the exercise at the end. So right now, we've got yet another survey. So are you ready for your second survey? And my second survey is all about that ability to say no. I want you to answer the question, do you find it hard to turn someone down? So can you vote now? And can you let me know in this survey, do you find it hard to turn someone down? So is saying no a bit tricky? Are you one of these people that needs to save up more of your emotional energy batteries for yourself? Okay, so whilst that voting is going on, we're going to do a quick recap of this section. We're going to go through our key pointers, and then after that, we're going to be looking at a few questions. Okay, so remembering from this chapter, your self-esteem is really built brick by brick. You've got to build those links in the chain by taking actions that support your self-esteem. I also want you to develop good standards for yourself. So I want you to be looking out for people who you connect with, who are consistent, who are the great partners that you really deserve. I also want you to feel comfortable with saying no. You are allowed to say no, and you have to prioritize sometimes saving up some of that emotional energy and emotional bandwidth for yourself and for your goals. Okay, so before we get to that survey result, I've got 3 more questions that have come in. I love the phrasing on this first question. It asks, what are the subtle subconscious signs to look out for if a woman is attracted to you? Subtle subconscious signs. That is a tongue twister, if I ever heard one. So here's the thing about signs. I think we shouldn't look out for signs that are too obscure. So by obscure, I mean, if we're thinking, did they put 1 kiss or 2 kisses at the end of their message? That's too obscure. Here's the thing. If someone likes you, if they want to spend time with you, if they potentially could be a good partner to you, if they've got that friendship quality, guess what? You're going to feel clear about how they feel. You won't have to second guess them too much. It should be clear and obvious where they stand. They will be consistently making time to get back to your messages. They'll be open about when's a good time for a video call. They will be keeping their dates with you. They won't be canceling last minute. So whilst it's, I suppose, good to think about what people's signs are and to obviously look out for them, I think really remember that the signs are going to be obvious and clear. So if you're there feeling confused, if anything, that could be a sign that this person isn't the right person for you right now. Also, remember that in order for the other person, in this case the woman, to be clear, you also need to be clear about what your intentions are. So you won't usually be able to get a clear signal unless you take that bold step forwards and, ask someone on that video date or ask them for their number. That's where you're going to get that clear feedback loop and really know where you stand. Now, I know that can feel very, very scary to take that next step forwards, but don't worry. I'm going to be dealing with how you can be more confident to make those first moves in our next section. Okay, so our next question here, which I love as well, and I think is going to be just how so many people are feeling right now, especially after we've had a whole year of dating during COVID. This person asks, why am I so scared of jumping into dating right now? I just think it's okay to feel scared. I think dating it's just one of these things. It makes us feel so vulnerable because we really have to open us in order to have the opportunity to have that incredible relationship. It means that we have to open ourselves up, we have to be vulnerable, we have to put ourselves out there. So I think with that vulnerability, whilst it can be obviously the most amazing thing when you do form that connection, of course it can feel a bit scary to get started. And all I would say is, please remember, you are allowed to date at your own pace. You don't have to date how anybody else thinks you should date, not even me. Ignore me. Instead, you have to go at a pace that makes you feel comfortable. So sometimes the difference between having the confidence to continue or stop is just as simple as taking things slowly. So give yourself permission to take things as slowly as you need to feel comfortable. Final question, and again, I think this is a question that a lot of people are going to identify with, and it says, how to identify people who are serious about starting a relationship as opposed to time wasters. Now, I tell you what, lovely people of Match, if I had £1 for every time I was asked this question, I'd be a very rich dating coach. So a lot of you out there are very worried about wasting your time, and I understand, because what are we told about dating? We're told that we need to hurry up, we're going to be left on the shelf, and that can just heap pressure on ourselves. And so having an experience which doesn't end up the way that we want, and we feel that we've been let down, feels really awful. Feeling like when we're so busy and when you've got a goal of forming a relationship, nothing can feel harder to deal with really than that sensation that someone's wasting your time. So I hope this helps, but I would say that most of the time, people don't intend to waste your time. Most people out there have really good intentions. They're good people. They just perhaps may not want exactly the same kind of relationship as you. They might not be as clear as you are about what relationship you want. They also might not want it quite on the same time frame as you. So all of this can lead to a lot of confusion, and it can lead to you feeling let down when your expectations aren't met. So there's two things that you can do to help to fix this. The first thing is, again, take things slowly. The slower that you take things, the better judgment call you're going to make, because you're going to get a much more authentic idea of who someone is. It's going to be much truer to what they're actually like. So I know it can be very romantic to feel like you've been swept off your feet, but instead it's actually going to be the slow and steady, the tortoise that wins the dating race. So remember, take things slowly and you'll be able to judge much more clearly. Also remember, if someone is on the same page as you and they want the same things, they're going to be two things. They are going to be clear and they are going to be consistent. I can't say these two words enough tonight. They're going to be clear, they're going to be consistent. It's not going to feel confusing. So, really, over that period of time, as you're getting to know someone, look out for that consistency that this person is going to be a marathon runner in the race to get to your affections. So, I have also had the survey results come in, and I'm glad I brought up that saying no thing, because actually, the majority of you out there struggle with saying no. So, that tells me that there's probably a lot of you out there who might feel a bit drained right now. You might feel like you're lacking motivation or you're stuck in a bit of a rut. And I just promise you that to start to turn that around and to feel motivated again, you're going to have to start to save some of your energy levels for yourself. So it's okay to say no to a few things in order to get your energy in the right place, feel good about yourself, and power yourself up to go get out there. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our third section, which is all about how you can build your confidence.